Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. You can see I'm sitting in the van again instead of in front of my fireplace inside. Can only mean one thing, that the van has come home from Vermont. If you recall to a previous video, we took our first long road trip. We went up into the Northeast and we were going through the Catskills in New York, and we were going to go up through Vermont and New Hampshire, and literally a mile before we really got into the Green Mountains of Vermont, the transmission threw an alert on the van and kicked out on us and left us stranded temporarily. All good things. We found a Ford dealer. We found we were only 2 miles from. We found a tow truck. We had a rental car company, and we were able to continue our adventure in Vermont. And when we talked to the Ford dealer on the previous Saturday of that trip, they said they had an idea what it was, but they were going to have to wait till Monday to find out. They did that, and it ended up being exactly what they thought. In the transmission of the Transits, there's something it's called a lead bar. It's like a control bar of sorts that is connected somehow with the valve body of the transmission. It was defective, and they replaced it. I went up last Friday night after work, drove up to Vermont, stayed in a hotel across the street from the Ford dealer, got up promptly on Saturday morning, went to the Ford dealer there in Bennington, Vermont, Carbone Ford. Thank you to the guys at Carbone Ford. They were phenomenal. Everybody was so friendly. They did a great job. You could tell that the van it felt different driving it home, not just because of that emotional, hey, it's been fixed and it's good now, but I noticed when we first bought the van, we bought this van brand new. It had 11 miles on it when we first got it back in March of last year, or last spring. I won't call it spring, actually. It was March 3rd we bought this van, and it was during a nor'easter snowstorm. That's why the van is named Quin, because we were in the middle of the nor'easter called Quin when we went to pick it up. So we picked up this brand new empty cargo van during just following a nor'easter. Well, the snow had stopped, but the wind was still here, and we were driving it home on 4-lane highways, this empty cargo van, into a headwind of 65-mile-an-hour winds, and that was quite the experience driving that home. So we decided that's how the van got its name, Quin. We named it after that storm. But you could tell that when we bought the van, when I was driving it, I drive this van to work every day, and it was every time when I would stop and start a lot, I could feel a thump. Right. I could hear it more than I could feel it, but I could feel it slightly. But it was just behind the driver's seat, right below the floor here, which is right where the transmission sits. And what we noticed was, it was driving fine, but like when I would stop and start, I kept hearing this thump. And the dealer local here to us, when I brought it up to them during a service, they said, well, you have a long drive train, and those parts will have some play in them, and you're probably just hearing that. Or it might be gas in your tank sloshing back and forth. I actually saw that online. But this was thumping a little more. It wasn't banging, it wasn't clanging, it was just a thump. You could hear this definite thump, and that was like the sound it would make. It's just a thump sound. And when I would brake, and then you'd hear it again when I hit the gas. So in one sense, the play in the drivetrain may have made sense, but it just seemed like it was doing it too often to be play in the drivetrain. And more importantly, it was happening at times when I was just I wasn't even on the brakes. I was coming up to a stop sign, and I was coasting in, and as the van was slowing down, I would hear this thump. And my understanding of the problem with it is this thing controls how the van shifts and so forth with the automatic shifting. So when I spoke to the mechanic there, asking him, why would I have never seen or heard this, or seen this error before? He says, because I drive 15 miles to work one way, and he said, the transmission, the computers in these it needs more time than that to really get the feel for what's going on, how are you driving, what, you know, how are things going on in the van, especially with your drivetrain. And the word I got was that, you know, by the time you would get to work and it might be getting warm enough throughout the drivetrain to go, hey, I've got a problem, you were shutting off the van and everything was resetting. And then you do it again at the end of the day, and that was kind of your daily habit. So when we took it out on the first long road trip, it wasn't our first camping trip. The first couple camping trips we took, though, were to State Park right up the road, just 2 miles from us. So again, we weren't doing any long road trip with it. So the theory was, anyhow, I don't know how true this is, but I guess it kind of had some validity to the way he was explaining it. You know, you've now gone on this long road trip. The computer in the van is now getting actual time to see what's happening, how are things playing out, and that's why it threw the error it did. You know, fortunate for us, it happened when it did. Because had we been another 2 miles, we would have been into the Green Mountains, you know, deep into the mountains, if you will, and we were already down to 1 bar on our cell phone. So it all worked out, and we do have the van home now. And, you know, I've spent some time this evening sitting out here in the van. The van's not done, but it's done to the point where we can use it now, and we can use it quite comfortably at this point. So I'm to the point now where I'm sitting in the van just looking at some of these little items. Some of them maybe not so little. I have some trim work to do with some of the original wiring harness. I've not done anything with the back doors yet. They're still the stock white metal. This side door here, the slider, is still the stock white metal. And we do have some nooks and crannies that we, you know, not 100% sure what we want to do with them, but you know, even when the times we've been out camping with it thus far, you know, it kind of has everything we need right now. We do like to fly fish, so I would like somewhere to put my fly rods. I thought about building some kind of rod holder across the ceiling, but we have the cedar ceiling, and I don't necessarily want to cover up all the work we did on the cedar ceiling with a rod holder. So we're trying to figure out different things that we can do with that. And just little nitpick things. Well, I won't necessarily call them nitpick things. The water pump for the sink. We have a switch on that turns it on and off. That's just not connected directly to the battery. And I learned that in one of the YouTube videos I had watched, that, you know, make sure you put a on-off switch to your water pump, because if you just wire it direct to the battery and that water pump is on all the time, if something ever happens and you spring some kind of leak, that pump's just going to be spewing water into your van. So we turn the pump on with a switch, you know, give it power, then use it, and then as soon as we're done with it, we turn the switch back off again. So we don't really ever have that problem. But that switch is just kind of hanging in there on wires. I've never really mounted it to anything yet, so little things like that we need to do. So, you know, it's Thursday night, coming into another weekend where my wife Beth is off, and we've spent the week deciding whether we're going to go anywhere this weekend and kind of do a redo, if you will, of our trip. Or not all the way up north, because we only have a weekend there. We had 4 days. But I think we've decided at most we may do a day trip this weekend, because it is coming into fall. The leaves are starting to turn, and so we may do a day trip. But I think we've spent so much time either working on the van or traveling, we've gotten behind on a lot of chores around the house to kind of prep the house and get it ready for winter. But again, so I'm just spending some time in the van tonight, just kind of looking at some of these things. I'll take you on a quick look around to some of the little items we're talking about. So again, we have the back doors. I haven't done anything with the you know, around the frame of the door or the inside of the doors themselves. I actually thought, like, maybe that would be a place I could build some rod holders on the inside of the doors and put my fishing rods there. We do have these spaces here along the sides of the bed I was kind of thinking of maybe building a little wine rack or some kind of storage in here that we would put there. I haven't decided on that. We have another one basically on this side to do, maybe one of them for a wine rack. But I also thought, since this one is up against this large cabinet, I could also build like a rod holder right here, because most of my fishing rods break down into two. So I could, I could kind of put them right up in here. I haven't quite decided that yet. We've been talking a lot about this center step and doing some storage there, but honestly, again, so far this little pull out, what you call it, little container we have here that's on wheels. You can hear the wheels rolling back there. It just has some little latches on it, and that's our stove and our pots and pans that we keep in there. And the fact that they're in there, that keeps any kind of rattling away. And this is nice because it also pulls out and becomes kind of a step to get up to this area here as well. So I don't know how much of a rush I am to do that and change that. That may be a winter project. I do have the wood for these cabinets, but Beth took some of the material that we made this cushion out of. We way overbought. We probably bought the whole bolt of material. We bought so much of that material, we could probably, I don't know, we could build a room with it. We have so much left yet. But so she made some quick curtain covers for these two cabinets, but I do have the wood to do the cabinet doors on there. And over on the side of this, I never did put the trim in here. And this is the piece of trim I need to put. I'm just going to put a piece of a cedar up here to cover this up. So little things like that we have to do yet. And the big accessory we have to put on yet is we did have, I haven't shown a picture of it yet, but maybe we'll do that this weekend. I do have a big 3D map of the United States that I left this space completely bare, and we're going to put this up here. Originally we were going to epoxy it, but we bought some really good double-sided poster tape, and I think we're going to use that, because my fear is if I epoxy it and over time the map gets ratty, now I've kind of ruined the wall too, where if I just use double-sided tape, I can at least pull the map back down and either replace it with a new map, or if we don't like it, we could paint this over and do something else with it. So, and I have this little space here in front of this bench, our little living room couch, that is empty here, and it kind of goes up to the top here. And one of the things I've always wanted is to build this storage shelf on the Transit, build this storage shelf out a little bit. And I see them on the ProMasters and I see them in other vans, but I just cannot figure out how to do it with the Transit. But I did see a picture where somebody built a shelf to come up behind the driver's seat, and then put a little mount bracket here, and then built a shelf that went across here, so at least it closed this in and gave you some storage there. So that might be an idea that we can do. The other piece I have to deal with yet, and I still haven't figured it out, and Beth and I talked about this a lot on our last trip, is we have our fridge storage and that's all set, but we still have this immense storage area that goes back this cabinet all the way to that door, and we still haven't figured out how we want to divide that up yet. Whether do we want to put a drawer in there, do we want to, we don't know. We have, I have the wood to put a second shelf in there. The idea was we were going to put our stove in there, but honestly our propane stove fits so nicely in that underneath piece, and when we did put our propane stove in there, rattling around on the roads, that was really annoying, listening to the metal rattle around. Now I will say the Coleman stove we do have is an ancient one, and I don't know if the new ones are quieter, but we still have this whole storage area to deal with. And in this place, in this couch, we do have, I'll move the cushion away here. We do have, this is where our porta-john is, but you'll notice there's still a ton of storage in there. Like we just throw the stuff in there right now, but we still have so much space in there to to do something with. Not to mention the space we still have in both of these cabinets here. Because once we built these overhead cabinets and we can store our clothes in here, we have basically nothing yet in there. So we're still up in the air with some of these areas and what we're doing with them. But you'll notice as I'm opening these cabinets a lot, you'll notice there's every cabinet. I've seen a lot of van videos. Folks are spending a bunch of money on the self-closing cabinetry and locks and so forth, and the catches. Honestly, and that's cool. I'm not downing it at all, but we have just used this heavy-duty 3M industrial Velcro, and like that's what's on these here. There's a piece of Velcro there and a piece up here. And when I close it, that's not open. You have to pull that to get that to open up. Just like, you know, they stay shut. And we have it on those cabinets there. We have it on this guy here and these guys up here. And honestly, this Velcro is, we actually had it this whole length around here, and I almost broke the handles trying to get the lid off. I had to, that's how strong this stuff is. So, Velcro, never leave home without it. It's, you know, it's good stuff. One thing I do want to show everybody, I mentioned these in a previous video when I was talking about this mattress, and somebody did ask me about the mattress on the bed, and I will get the link to where we got this mattress. It's a folding mattress. The way we can get in our benches here is we just kind of lift it up, and it hinges right here, so we can just kind of open up right in. You'll notice how empty those benches are. Yeah, and we don't Velcro those, but I did put some felt on there so they never rattle. And then I just kind of fold him back out and push him back down into place. Of course, now I just made the bed, darn it. Anything for the viewers. But one of the things I wanted to show, it was when I talked about this mattress once before, I said we use these yoga blankets, and these blankets are they're good yoga blankets. We got them at a yoga shop, and they're good and thick, and they're big, and with two of them you don't even have to unfurl them entirely. You can have them doubled up and they still fit each person really nice, and they're super duper warm. They're nice and colorful, and they fold up really nice and just kind of go down at the foot of the bed, and we really like them. They're kind of they've become my favorite blanket, and we've actually considered getting a couple for the bed in the house. We've liked them so much. So that's the update I have for you this week. Again, it's Thursday. I'm just hanging out in the van. You know, the van's home safe, and I just enjoy hanging out. The van has become like our second home, and we really enjoy, just hanging out in the van. Honestly, there's several nights where we'll just come out here and just sit down just to change up the scenery, if you will. And that got us to talking, and we'll do a video probably one day on the whole hashtag van life movement, because I think van life means different things to different people. We're approaching the age, I'm 52, and I will not say how old my wife is because that would be detrimental to my future. We're looking out down the road here at, retirement not too far out. And so, I mean, we have a home, but we want to start traveling, and we've actually considered, what would that look like? Would we maybe sell our house and live on the road and just, live in the van, or buy some little plots of land where we could, maybe 2 or 3 just tiny little pieces of land somewhere, strategically located in the country, so we could be, wherever the fishing's good in that part of the country, base camp out of there and branch out from there. I don't know. There's so many opportunities, and I think in some respects that's maybe why we haven't 100% finished the van yet, because we're still thinking, what does van life mean to us? Right now it's become like a weekend warrior kind of thing, where we spend all week trying to figure out where do we want to go, and in 2 weeks, well, not this weekend, but next weekend, I'm leaving out of here with the van to head north for a couple of days of some fishing, and I'm swinging back through that week on Thursday because Beth has to work the beginning of the week, but I'm going to pick her up on Thursday, and then we're going to swoop out somewhere. I'm going to pick her up Thursday morning, we're going to restock the van, get everything packed up, closed, washed, and just keep on going in a different direction. And I don't know whether we'll go north or south. You know, that's kind of the cool part of this. We just don't know. And honestly, the neat part of it is we don't have to care. We have what we need with us. So, but I won't belabor that point. Like I said, I think it would be an interesting video just to sit down and chat about, you know, van life. And you know, you see it a lot online. You see a lot of these tours. You see a lot of young couples living in there. Living in the vans, and you know, in van life, I think has really taken on the whole idea of the younger generation, which I think is a great thing, and I think it gives younger generation an opportunity to perhaps have a living environment that in the world we live in right now, at least in this country, maybe they wouldn't otherwise have, and be able to see adventures. And like, I drive this to work every day, so it's a home that somebody could live in and actually still have a job and drive to work. So you know, it's got that potential. I see it as so many different things, and I think it would be an interesting video. But anyway, enough on that. So that's our update. Maybe I'll check in later in the weekend, show you anything I've done to the van, or maybe something I'm working on with the van. But until next time, this is Ken. The van is home. We're happy, planning our next trip. We'll see you on down the road. Bye-bye now.